Welcome to Manifest Equity. I'm Dr. Tiffany Jana, and I am excited to bring two guests to our conversation today. Today we have Andreas Addison and Sarad Davenport joining us, and we'll be having a conversation about Manifest Equity through the lens of entrepreneurship and business and all kinds of other things as they come up. So first, I would like to go ahead and introduce you, Andreas Addison. Welcome back to the show.
Well, thank you. It's glad to be here. So yeah, I've always loved these conversations. And as our experience together has been quite extensive, Tiffany, I know that we've shared a lot of conversations, broken bread over our topics of what we'd like to work on. For me, it's been exciting being a part of this conversation. I think seeing the world change before our eyes and providing an opportunity to, I think, advance the conversation in an equitable, inclusive, and diverse way is important today. And I think with connectivity and the fact we're doing this via Zoom right now shows that we can do anything if we put our minds to it. For me right now, I've been working on, I was a professor at UVA. I taught a class on introduction of social enterprise, where I really focused on bridging the gap between disparate communities with business type models and solutions to drive that change. Really did a design thinking focus and really pushed my students to think about equity and think about what that meant to them, but also more importantly, what it meant to those who were not in the conversation. So really push them to be intentional around what they wanted to do and accomplish in that manner. And that came from, I think, a decade working in City Hall, working as a civic innovator, trying to drive change and new solutions to how we operate as a city. One of my biggest accomplishments was helping create the Office of Community Wealth Building with Mayor Dwight Jones and his staff. And I think that's important to see, really focusing on the barriers between those who are in low income populations versus those who are trying to be in the middle class. And sometimes it's not necessarily anything of their own fruition, but something that we put as a structural barrier, and identifying that is key, but also finding solutions around that has been important. So it's been fascinating watching the evolution of my career, our conversations together, Tiffany, to get to this point. So thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. Always an honor to talk with you. And I really like, as our viewers will get to see in a moment, like I love the way your mind works. And you know, Civic Innovator, there's no one like you, and it's an honor to know you, friend.
Likewise.
Awesome. All right, Sarad, tell these beautiful people who you are.
Yeah, I figured I'd do a little bit of chronology that may let people know kind of how I got to this point. And I'll start with, leaving high school. I grew up in Charlottesville, Virginia, and I always wanted at that time to be a music video producer, believe it or not. And I ended up going to school for communications and media. But when I got there, I fell in love with writing. And I ended up at 19 years old getting an internship with the New York Times company as a communications intern. And I just fell in love with writing since then. And I took up an English minor. And that kind of changed the trajectory of my work. I started coding. I was coding back in the 90s. So like a lot of folks are coding, but that was my kind of first entrance to it. But I had a career that was set out in new media, technology. I had a great first job, was doing well as a 20-something-year-old, bought a house, all of those things, but had like an interruption in my life where I found out that I really, my passion and what I felt like my purpose in life was to give back and help people. And I wanted to take the culmination of all of, kind of those experiences of, in media, technology, and new technology, and bring it into the human service education world. So I had to do some transitions, had to get some more education. I ended up going to seminary also, by the way, so I did that. And then I went back into the workforce as an educator. I became a teacher. I taught in Southeast DC for the Knowledge is Power organization, KIP, as some people know it. I think it's one of the best charter school operations in the country, probably, the best if you would ask anybody from KIP. And then I came back from KIP to Charlottesville to direct the federally funded Promise neighborhood in Charlottesville. So I was the executive director there for 5.5 years, creating a continuum of solutions for a zone within the city. And I was, one of the great things that we did was we did 2 comprehensive needs assessments So we did, kind of like one when we started the work to really listen to the community and think about what the community wanted and what they saw as success. And our job was to be technical assistants to support them in realizing that success. And a couple of the things that happened is like the graduation rate went, we were able to, listen to the community and bring in the supports to make sure that, kids, we were able to get 25+% within like the first couple of years of implementation to the graduation rate. So, and now it's steady, I've been gone for 3 years now. It's still going. The organization is still functional, still has money. So I didn't leave them, broken. And then I ended up at the national level at Communities in Schools, still there working on, I work in organizational health and performance. So I work with helping community-based organizations throughout the country, 26 states plus the District of Columbia to, execute on the ground strategies for schools and children. And also I will lift up my own private practice, Davenport Strategic Innovation and Design, where, I work on design thinking and support organizations, institutions, and agencies in accomplishing their goals from a multifaceted perspective. But I think that, in this work, probably my specialty is collective impact. So do a lot of collective impact work and cross-sector work. So that was like a sweet spot. That's one of the areas, collective impact and cross-sector work. So that's me. Hopefully I did that fast enough.
Oh no, I mean, this is, I want people to know who you are. And this combination of Sarad and Andreas, like, you guys are among my favorites, because the idea, so, okay, innovators, while we are not the largest part of the population, there are plenty of innovators and visionaries. Like, we have accomplished amazing things in our world. We have left much to be desired, but we've invented so much, and we've grown so much, and we've made a lot of impact. But the reality is that I would say that the vast majority of people who are thinking and innovating at the level that you guys are thinking and innovating are really doing it in service of their own gain, unfortunately, right? And so what I love about the two of you, and I will, if I'm allowed, I'm gonna throw myself in there because I want to be a cool kid like y'all. Like, my company's a B Corp, right? Because it matters to me to give back and to be part of, like you're saying, the collective impact. So what's extraordinary about you guys is that you are not innovating in service of your own gain, in service of your own promotion. You are taking the very skills that have made, billionaires out of people, and you are applying them in service of community. And that, my friends, is extraordinary. So welcome, Sarad. I'm really, really glad for this conversation. So I want to jump right in. You guys you're innovators. How the people are doing and how business and life and work affects the people is something that matters very deeply to each of you. So I'm really, really curious to hear from each of you how you are seeing the impact of this pandemic as it plays out, on the constituencies, the people that you care about.
Well, since I went first, I'll go ahead and keep that trend going. We'll make it alphabetical, right? Andreas, Sarad. So
there we go.
I think there is, in my world, in my spheres, I also serve on city council here in Richmond. And, I think I've been seeing a lot of conversations happen where it's making sure everyone is at the table, or making sure that we are focusing on those who might not be able to be at the table. And I think in that conversation, we're seeing a lot of new conversations. And I think for the first time, there's no rush. And usually there's a rush to try to make decisions. And I think there's a time to take a deep breath and allow for the realities of for me, when we canceled schools in Richmond, and the immediate response was that we're sending all these children home. And in the middle of the semester, what are we going to do to make sure that they have means in which to be educated and to continue their development? And we realized really quickly how many families didn't have home internet, how many children didn't have access to a home laptop or computer. And then you start realizing how that is impacting the classroom without having to be home, the regular classroom. So how are they doing homework? How are they being inquisitive? How are they exploring their own learning and capacity in that level? Well, then you compound that here at a public school level in Richmond. to what I'm doing working as a professor at UVA, and all my students are being sent home, and we're doing our classes via Zoom, and I'm finding that students are dropping off because their internet isn't consistent or strong enough to handle the load itself. And so you start realizing that, wow, this is not a true rural, urban, suburban conversation. We're all dealing with an equitable access to the basics. And I think this is creating the crisis where we're looking at the internet being a fundamental need now. It's no longer a nice thing to have. It's how the world works, making sure that we're inclusive around that conversation and identifying the fact that when we moved our communication, especially for me in my district, to via email and online, I was also missing the elderly. I was also missing people without intentionally doing so, that they weren't getting the communication I was putting out. And so when you start looking at not just the socioeconomic lens, but just people, and start realizing that there are biases we put in place, there are things that we assume from our own experience that everyone has the same thing that I have, and we're proven wrong time and time again. And I think it's important today when you start looking at the reality of how we access information and share things together. We are very digital first and digital foremost, but yet we don't realize that we're also missing and not getting people to be part of that dialogue. And it's something that we need to address together. And for me, that's been fascinating, watching that sink in with certain people around that question about how do we discuss truly what we need to do to overcome recovery aspects. And when you start realizing, wait, for who? And when you ask that for who, and the answer becomes everyone looking around at each other, and it's been the same group from before the response, you realize we're not talking to the right audience. And that's been something that I've been finding that's been really important for me. It's also been important for me to keep asking that question too. Probably more, I guess you would say, woke to that issue and needing to be more of an ally in terms of making sure more people are invited to the table. With the use of technology such as this, there's no reason for being limited to a number of seats at a table anymore. I can now add as many people to the conversation as want to be a part of it. And that's important because no longer is it physical access, finding parking, doing all the things that get to a meeting. It's now, hey, here's a link in your email, go open it, assuming you have internet and assuming you have a device that you can log into. But I think those are the conversations we're starting to have.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love it. Yeah. And I do agree with this idea that internet it's not a luxury anymore. It is a fundamental basic utility that people need. And we're seeing that now. Like, Andreas, we've been to Spain together on business, trying to help cities around the world be more inclusive. And like, I was blown away way back then to see the public, just how open public spaces were just Wi-Fi enabled. Everywhere you went, there was just free Wi-Fi, and it was, it was available, it was abundant, it was democratized. And yeah, more of that, please. Yeah. So Sarad, what are you thinking?
I mean, that was a great launching point. About, I was going to use those words, internet as utility, which is a concept. I think, we have running water now. There wasn't a time that we always had that, right? But it became a utility. And in our age, the currency of being online is invaluable, and that needs to be a part of the infrastructure. And it's funny that, I did some travel in Europe too, and I would always be interested about, like, in some places in Europe, they can be further ahead than we are with technology. So even years ago. So, but yeah, so one of the genius things I think that came out of the promised neighborhoods and that just whole concept of kind of collective impact and place-based strategies was one of the absolute priorities within the grant, which was comprehensive internet access, right? And one of the things that, we were able to do for a short period of time with a partner was to light up a Wi-Fi network in the oldest and largest public housing community, right? And it was a big, it's political. It gets tough because there's money involved, because there's market share involved, and then there's different strategies that a lot of these large corporations are trying to institute. But if we're talking about utility, then we really have to think about it. Because at that time, the school system were giving every kid in high school a tablet, but it didn't make sense to have a tablet if you weren't able to, to access it. So yeah, that's what I agree. I concur wholeheartedly with what all that said. But another thing that I've been lifting up, I also had the opportunity to sit on a health and economic policy group at the Brookings Institute for a couple of years. And, you know, one of the things that came up as people talk about more recently is the social determinants of health. And I think that, you know, these issues around the neighborhood and built environment, health and healthcare, the social and community context, education, economic stability, those factors that are a part of the ecosystem that create like a healthy community, and how that ecosystem is not the same across demography, or, you know, it's not the same across communities. And we have an opportunity now to strengthen that within the system, within the current, as tragic as the situation is right now. I think we do have an opportunity to really look at those systems and those ecosystems across communities and across demography, and really shore up those systems and have an honest conversation. And I'll leave with this. I really got into, took me a long time, but I got into urban agriculture back when I was doing work. And I was a skeptic. I was like, man, what is this stuff? It doesn't relate. And I ended up hiring a retired dietitian from the health department, from the Virginia Department of Health. And she was telling me, no, Sarad, this is important. And we ended up doing this whole urban agriculture initiative. We got a USDA grant at one point. But what I learned about it is, you know, people always talk about the table, right? But my thing is, what about, you know, from an urban agriculture concept, what about farm to table? Because by the time you get to the table, a lot of decisions are already done. So who is at the table? Who is planting seeds?
Mm-hmm.
Who is at the ideation stage? So when we get to the ideation stage, when things are being developed, before it gets to the table, but who's at the farm, right? And so, like, we have to begin to think about, because we end up getting solutions that don't produce the outcomes we're looking for, because we bring people at the table, but the table's too late. Now, who are we talking to before we even get into the ideation phase? So, you know, those are the things that I've, you know, kind of been thinking about.
I love it. I love the farm to table, bringing that into the who's at the table metaphor. That's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant, because you're right. You know, I have been around many of those tables, sometimes early, sometimes late, where all kinds of things are being thrown around, and then, you know, by the time you invite the people who are being affected, you've already made the decisions. You've made the decisions for them, without them. And that is super problematic. So it's so fascinating to me that you guys are both very sort of in that social space. And I'm tempted to stay there, but you all are both so knowledgeable as well, kind of in this entrepreneurial space. And when we talk about you know, things like internet as utility, when you have access to the internet, you know, like you said, like when you show up there, it creates opportunity. So people who would otherwise be economically disadvantaged suddenly have access, can create enterprising opportunities for themselves. So I'm curious, from your vantage point, if you see any additional opportunities or perspectives from the entrepreneurial aspect, right? So where is the energy, the focus, the life right now, as it pertains to managing the pandemic from an entrepreneurial standpoint?
Wow, that's a very complicated answer, because I have such a vast array of colleagues and friends that are entrepreneurs, that when you ask that question, to my mind comes so many different answers. Mm-hmm. Some is they are made for this. Some of them are, I've navigated so many hurdles and challenges, why not this one too? And then in that too, finding the way to pivot. So ways in which to modify their own, I guess, initiative and what they're working towards for more. But also, more importantly, I think those who actually have, maybe a semi-mature model of what they're doing as an entrepreneur, realizing how can they better meet their customers. I'm seeing so much free help and services being offered, whether it be for their business clients, saying, hey, if I can be for them here now in this crisis, that means that I'm valuable to them. And you're seeing it's more about the value. It's more about the relational value, not just the monetary value. And so what I'm finding is that this entrepreneurial spirit has really broken down, I think, a lot of the capitalistic mindsets of things, thinking about profit first. And you're starting to realize that there's more important things to be aware of. And while in the time being right now, everyone's scurrying around to make sure that they can have income and pay for their cost of living and things they need to do in that space. But they're also worried about those who maybe helped them pay those bills. They're worried about those who've supported them through this process. Maybe a first client, maybe a last client, maybe a best client, maybe even the worst client, and seeing how they could possibly be a better asset for what they're doing. And I think that's truly what I'm seeing come across, is that this time of need is equitable for everybody. It's not just a plight you see in a certain neighborhood or a certain state or a certain country. It's global. And when it makes it be a we, and the conflict that we're dealing with is a we have a challenge in which to identify with the solution being part of all of us, not just you or them or me and you. It's us. And I think that's the key part too. And so if I were to kind of compare that to, I'm having a town hall tonight for my first district residents, virtually using Zoom. And one of the things that I have had emails, I put a form out for them that give me questions first. And a lot of them I've said, why can't you open up this area? This little neighborhood is fine. Everything's safe in this area. We're fine. Why can't we open up in specific areas? And the challenge I have is that do not live in a world or an economy or a city or even a neighborhood that's closed. And there's no one size fits all. And if you start really peeling back the layers, they're not even understanding the fact that the virus is not spread by, those who you live around. It's those who you don't see. It's those who deliver the food, who deliver the packages, who are in and around doing other work and in and around the businesses that you might be visiting, or the person that came in before you, and you don't know where that person was from. And so in that, it's not a bad thing, but that's part of the reason this resolution takes all of us to come together and do our part. And I think that spirit for most people is understood and embraced. But for those who just don't quite get it, I also look at the fact that, going back to my experiential bias piece, they've never experienced this before. Someone else's health has never been dependent on what I do or do not do. And so in this, we're starting to see this is kind of breaking apart of this mold of, really an egocentric society having to take a step back and realize I can't just be about me. And that's the key part that I'm seeing play out through these conversations in my world. But also, I don't think it's been strong enough. And I think sometimes the media misses that point, is that you can talk all day about how important it is to have a mask on or wear gloves or wash your hands properly, et cetera. But that's not it. It's the why. Why is that important? And that's the thing that I feel like is important. I like to help people find their why, find what that purpose is for that. So that's kind of where I'm seeing all these things take shape.
Woo! That's amazing. That is, so beautiful. I saw, did you see Alan Dow's article that he put out recently? Like, face masks, the new sign of respect. Oh, I love that. I'm like, yes, exactly. It's not about you. It's about all of us.
I love it.
Brilliant. Well, yes, I deliberately asked that question that would bring together complicated responses in your mind, because I do know that you're connected across so many different types of entrepreneurs. So I have my follow-up question for both of you, but first, Sarad, I want to hear from you. And I've been calling you Sarad for forever, and I heard you say it slightly differently. Am I saying your name wrong this whole time?
Well, I, for a long time in my life, I didn't correct people, but my mom says Sarad, but it technically can be pronounced either way. Ooh. But we go with my mom, and I should have caught you in the beginning, but you were going, so I was like,
you know what, Sarad, I have a thing. So many people come from complicated backgrounds. They have names that are not ethnically familiar to us, and we butcher their names, and I take that as a point of community. So I will call you Sarad because that is your name and it is important. Awesome. So my bad, Sarad. See, it rhymes. I'm a poet.
It's all good. It's all good. It's all good. And then everybody that's watching will know also. So
yeah, hey, public service for today. Say the man's name right.
We'll take it to scale. Yeah, the thing about it, right? And before the pandemic, and I think less so, within normal society and within ecosystems, there's discretionary power that is wielded in certain areas. And what I like about cyberspace is that cyberspace has a certain meritocracy attached to it, where discretionary power can sometimes be neutralized if the utility is available to all, and folks have access and education around being a part of it. Because I've seen some people in this particular space who are shining and thriving and organizing and building and developing ways of, I sit on the board of an organization that they did an innovation challenge for youth. And the youth have to submit their challenge through their phone. They have to do like a 45-minute, pitch, right? And I was like, wow, that's amazing. And the youth send in their pitch through the, and it took fire. They did a commercial for it and everything. The press, got involved. So like, I've seen people like really take this opportunity as a way to showcase things that they may have been prevented, or if somebody with discretionary power would have told them, you can't do that, or you're not supposed to do that, or you're not able to operate in that space freely. And people are taking this time to like really free themselves and understand that if I'm good, then I can be relevant and present, right? And so I think that is, just to put it in a nutshell, that's what I'm noticing and seeing, is that, some of the discretionary power folks are, kind of being able to overcome it or work through it in a better way in this space.
That's awesome. So my follow-up question for both of you is, okay, so there's definitely a different set of responses for businesses, for entrepreneurs, for nonprofits, based on, like you said, Andreas, their maturity, their tolerance for risk and resiliency for the challenges that just are inherent to entrepreneurship. But what would you say to the leader or the entrepreneur who, this really does represent the single biggest, or if not one of the biggest challenges that they've ever faced as leaders. And let's say that they don't have necessarily that maturity. Like what types of advice or what kinds of considerations would you want to lift up to, to the entrepreneur now who is trying to stay relevant, who is trying to survive this, and who frankly is just scared and disheartened? This is some scary, unprecedented stuff. They might have, just found their stride and really feeling like they were gonna, be okay. And then this. So what advice would you offer for the folks who are scared and losing heart?
Well, there's a quote that comes to mind is, in the end, everything will be all right. And if it's not all right, it's not the end. And so for me, the spirit of entrepreneur, small business owner, is one of a pioneer. It's one of trailblazing. And I think the path that got you to the place where you felt invincible, or just things were just clicking on all gears, is a place that you don't last for long. And a lot of times that hunger and that desire, that dream, that drive that took you from idea to whatever that empire you've created is, you have to have a spirit of resilience and perseverance. And I think it's really hard because we've associated so many of those things, oftentimes with either business relationships or tangible things you can see, that office space, the car. There's materialism that goes with that, and it's fine. It's inherent with all of us. But identifying what is of that desire that shows that you've driven this thing to be what it is, that was that success piece, those plans you had maybe in January 2020 of what you wanted to do this year, that you've probably thrown away weeks ago. And it's fine, because I think that in this change and this spirit of what you're dealing with, the drive it took you to get to that place of success is what need to motivate you to get to that point again. And I feel like in looking in my little crystal ball I have for the future of what tomorrow is, there is no expectation of tomorrow being like it was yesterday. And the future of work, that everything about this this pandemic and the response to that is going to change how we interact as humans, as people, whether it be socially, personally, with your family, or professionally. And as an entrepreneur, I think making it be that you're not just thinking back of what it took you to get to here, because I think that what's going to take you to where you find that place again is the journey that's before you. And a lot of our decisions right now have been really difficult, and it's been including laying off people that you love. It's been saying no to things that you used to have no problem saying yes to. It's cutting off bills and deciding which is more important. It's also navigating the complicated world of PPP and EIDL and SBA loans and banks and all that stuff too. And I think in that, we're not at the recession we had in 2009. We're not at a place where access to capital and money and support isn't available. We're dealing with a perception of safety from a public standpoint as a customer that's different. And I think in that, one of the things that's going to change really quickly is our value proposition for our price, because I think you're going to see less office spaces. You're going to see less co-working. You're going to see more work from home. You're going to see back to what I would say are the early days of every entrepreneur, where you sat in a coffee shop and just crank through some stuff. We're going to go back to that. It's going to be a little different coffee shop. It might be your own coffee shop in your house, like mine is right now. And I think in that, that's where we'll find that next level conversation, because it's what we as entrepreneurs do right now, and shaping what we think tomorrow should be and needs to be, and is it done in a way that fits our customers, but also our dreams included in that too, interwoven between it all, that I think is what's going to shape tomorrow. And I think it's up to us to really tell and push that envelope a little bit further than anybody else will.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, because I don't think I have told anyone. I think I was waiting for you to be part of this, but this series actually sprouted out of a conversation that you and I had in the not quite super early. It was like the late early mid days of quarantine. We had a discussion about creating this kind of offering for folks. But yeah, it's a very interesting space that we occupy. It is a different world, and the reason for calling it manifest equity is I definitely see an opening, an opportunity, and a necessity to visualize a new future that is very divergent from what used to be. And I love your advice to both leaders and entrepreneurs to kind of scrap what you planned or what you thought, or leaning on the old way. The only part of your old way that's really useful is your resilience, right?
Yeah.
Courage and hope. But everything else, like, we have to make new choices. I had a wonderful conversation with a client today, and they're talking about the whole team of people that all have children and babies under 3, and spouses who are nurses, and they're the team is not as productive as it used to be. And I'm having to encourage people, like, you've got to think about people's well-being. Like, this is like, people are traumatized and will continue to be traumatized in ways that we can't even predict right now. And so we need to be really careful and really thoughtful about how much we are asking people to do, like what really needs to get done. Let's triage for them, because your executive function, when you're under constant cortisol stress, not enough sleep, like, you're not turning off. We need to be able to tell people, this is the one thing that needs to happen this week. If you can get to these others, that would be great. But here's the one thing we'll focus on, because this is, we don't have precedent for this. So dreaming big, thinking of envisioning a new future. This is such a beautiful reset to try something new and more equitable across the board. To me, there's no system that's off limits. So many of them were broken. We know how they're broken. This is giving us evidence of more ways that they're broken. And I think we have power to do something different, particularly those of us in leadership positions, those of us who are entrepreneurs, founders, civic innovators, right? The people who have the ear of the people with the power. We really have an opportunity to do things differently. So Sarad, hey, I got it right.
Cool. I agree. I mean, you all are, it's resonating with me in my heart. So yeah, it's what you have already said. But one of the things that I think over the past 3 years I've kind of accepted with myself is that, I want everybody to take this comment I'm about to say with all constructively and with social distancing and appropriate PPE, is that the scary thing oftentimes it's the right thing to do, right? You know, what scares me, what has scared me over the last 3 years, and, you know, I had like a, you know, a personal friend, kind of like a coach, you know, and they were like, do the scary thing, you know, like, and really kind of step out there and do those things. And it's worked. It's worked for me. Like the things that I'm just so fearful of are like, what will people think? What will people think of me? Will they look at me differently? You know what I mean? And those things have really opened up doors that I didn't even know were there. They were always there, but they were kind of waiting on me. So for leaders and entrepreneurs out there, it's to like, you don't even know. I think even just me being here today, like you don't even know what's available to you out there until you like really are willing to do the thing that scares you, right? And so, you know, that's kind of what I'll, you know, that'll be my closing remarks. It's like do the things, you know, within some, you know, constructive, you know, boundaries. Do the thing that's kind of scary, you know, and really push yourself to think beyond where you are and what are some of the possibilities. And then I guess lastly, in reality, you know, the wellness piece that you brought up, Tiffany, I think that is so I always say that art is the final frontier, but I think also, you know, wellness, how wellness plays into that, interweaves into art is, I think, gonna be like the final frontier because people are gonna want to transcend, right? And how do we transcend? And wellness is part of like, how do we go to a new level in humanity? Art, wellness, music, innovation, like those things. So, you know, that would be my advice to those leaders, entrepreneurs out there. Do the scary thing and think about, you know, this new world and how you can innovate in the new space. And art and wellness is, I think, going to be a big deal.
I love that, Sarad. Let's see, Sarad. So because I want to say Sarad. Okay, it's because I'm Jana, and I want to do it that I-E-O-U. It's I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna get it, and we're gonna make such a big deal out of it right here on this program, and everybody gonna get it right from now on.
Awesome.
No, but I love that, the art and the wellness. It's interesting because one of the things that I think has become really apparent through this pandemic is that, you know, when you are projecting your work, your person through cyberspace from a random corner in your house, suddenly your barking dog, your bouncing child, your plant that needs watering, whatever the case that it is, the kettle going off, all of your life is now part of these other parts of your life where it didn't intersect. And like for in the realm of justice, equity, diversity, inclusion, Jedi work, we're always promoting this idea of creating a sense of belonging and inviting the whole person to be part. And people have for decades resisted, like, no, leave your home stuff at home. You bring your work stuff to work, right? It's like, that's like saying leave your leg at home and only bring your 2 arms and your brain. Like, you can't do that. And so this situation has humanized our workforce in a way that I have not seen since the things I read about, you know, before the Industrial Revolution. Like this is some really interesting, humanizing, leveling stuff that hopefully our leaders will look at this and say, okay, I can see how, you know, nurturing the humanity, the wellness, the well-being of the beautiful people who work with me is actually not only the best thing to do, it is the right thing to do. It is also, hello guys, the smart thing to do, right? It just makes the most sense. So, oh my gosh, it has been such an honor to talk with you guys. I cannot wait to have you back because this was such a fun conversation. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for watching Manifest Equity. Please check out our other episodes. And before we go, Andreas, where do people go to find you and the things that matter to you?
I'm actually working on my digital presence right now. So LinkedIn would be the best way to search for me. Just look for Andreas Addison. I think I am pretty much the only civic innovator that exists. So you can use either one. That's probably the best way to find me.
Awesome. And as soon as you have all that updated, we will add it to this, because this wonderful thing about the Digisphere is it's evergreen, it's perennial. And Sarad,
yeah,
where can
so
we find you?
I'm trying to do more on Twitter. So Sarad Davenport, or my handle is SDAVENPO, so S Davenport. And you can
Okay.
find me on Twitter. I'm there. I'm trying to, build up my following. So help me out, y'all.
Yay. So
Will
you're
do.
going to do more. You're not going to do the most. It's good to hear.
Exactly.
All right. Well, everyone, the resources that they mentioned and their contact information will be added to this video. And thank you so much, everyone. Go forth and manifest equity. Bye.
Thank you.
See you guys.